There are two kinds of gamers, the people who play for fun and the people who play to win. Similarly, with gaming monitors, there are those that are great for casual, enjoyable experiences like your ultra-wide QD OLEDs or your 48-inch OLED TVs, and there are those that ignore everything for absolute performance. Color, viewing angle, comfort, and standard of living be damned. That's why for the last couple of years, the absolute king of esports gaming monitors has been the BENQ XL2546K from BENQ Zowie. For an average user, it's honestly absolute trash for everything apart from gaming. With a panel that was first released in 2016, albeit the 2022 model has a couple of updates. It's terrible for everything except performance in fast-paced gaming with crap viewing angles, poor color accuracy due to its TN panel technology, and it can't even do actual 8-bit color, instead opting for 6-bit plus 2-bit FRC. But the reason it's still king, as I said, is that it's the absolute best when it comes to giving the gamers that care about it the ultimate clarity so that they have the edge when they're gaming and winning. Now, it might only be 240Hz, but despite the existence of 280, 300 or 360Hz out there, it has reigned supreme as one of the most popular gaming monitors despite its price to performance, because there's more to how a good gaming monitor is than just pure refresh rate. Now, it didn't win because of numbers, but the BENQ still won because of a little thing that they had mastered before everyone else and really mastered super duper well and still do better than most in fact, and that is called backlight strobing, which BENQ calls DIAC+. To understand why that matters and why BENQ was king, we have to understand what is motion clarity and what determines max performance in gaming. What does a gaming monitor do exactly? It basically gives you visual information that your brain then can turn into actions and decisions that you then input through mouse clicks, keyboard presses, and other methods. Picture a factory that makes tables out of raw wood. Its inputs are the raw materials you give it in the form of timber, and its outputs are the tables that it makes. Let's say we want this factory to make more tables more quickly. How do we do that? Simple, right? We just give them more wood. Well, less waiting time for these stocks and materials to replenish, more wood to work with. The factory is going to simply produce more. But at some point, it's going to hit its absolute limit. At some point, increasing the amount of input or the amount of raw materials isn't actually going to make the factory produce more quickly. So it's going to have excess wood that there's no point giving it. In that case, how do we make this factory produce faster then? Well, instead of raw timber that we give the factory, raw wooden logs, we give the factory materials and inputs that is a lot easier to manufacture with and work with to turn into tables. Pre-cut logs, pre-measured materials, pre-treated timber, pre-fabricated stuff are all examples of this. By making it easier and easier for the factory to manufacture, the factory can then make more stuff, specialize more, and be quicker and more productive. Now, this is actually how global supply and manufacturing chains work, but that's not what we're talking about today. Enough about tables and wood. How does all that relate to gaming monitors? In this analogy, increasing the refresh rate of a screen is essentially increasing the total amount of materials we give our factory, which is our brain. We're showing our brain more frames, which means more raw information is being provided to our brain, more inputs into our brain factory. But as in the analogy, increasing the refresh rate has its limits. As we can see from how going from 240Hz to 360Hz is much less noticeable and impactful as going from 60 to 180. Both 120Hz increase, but the former is definitely less felt than the latter. So how do we pre-process and pre-cut the information like in the analogy so that our brains, our factories can process this more easily? That is where motion clarity comes in. Motion clarity is how clear the display is when showing motion, meaning how sharp and unblurred the images being shown on screen are when things are moving. We can usually determine this by using a slow-mo fast shutter speed camera and seeing how clear the image is when a fast still frame is captured. By having more motion clarity, every image is clearer and sharper even when in motion, which means the information being given to your brain is easier to understand and process because it's clearer and less blurred. So you can more quickly get what's going on easily and react quicker, which means better gaming performance. That's where backlight strobing and DIAC comes in. BENQ's DIAC+ was for the longest time the best implementation of backlight strobing in gaming monitors. Backlight strobing is important because it helps eliminate the motion blur a LCD display has, which is caused by the pixels in the crystal layer of LCD, remember, not being able to change and react to changes fast enough. No matter what manufacturers do, there will be a delay and blur when a pixel goes from showing one color to another in a LCD display, since each pixel is actually a series of crystals that need to physically rotate and move at fractions of a second to display different colors. This transition causes blur, as there is going to be an in-between transition stage that is visible and an in-between color which looks blurry since it's not the final intended pixel, assuming motion blur in the game is turned off, because when that is turned off in-game, every frame the game is pumping out is supposed to be completely clear as a still frame and shouldn't be blurry at all. Which means if you took a screenshot, it should be completely like still with no blur at all and just perfectly sharp. So if your screen is not showing that, then there is motion blur from the screen as well. To eliminate this blur on LCDs, the solution is to strobe the backlight and turn it off when the pixels are transitioning from one stage to the other, so that the in-between smeary, blurry transitioning stage isn't shown. This results in there only being crystal clear frames in which pixels have fully changed to being shown to your brain, so that the image looks clearer and sharper. Basically, because you can't see the in-between transitional frames or transitional colors which are blurry and full of blurriness, and your brain will not be confused by those smeary looking frames and register a clearer image of what's going on, it will be able to process the information faster and react more quickly. It's the equivalent of unfollowing Instagram pages and news pages that spam you with a load of tabloid news you don't care about, so you only see the legitimate stuff you need to on your feed, so you can only focus on the legit news of the world. But that's in theory, because depending on the implementation, the effect can be too minimal, not sufficiently reducing the smear, and the effect can also be too harsh, causing pixel overshoot or ghosting on the image. Both are bad, and it's why BENQ's implementation was so good. It was the best out of all of its competition and was so far ahead because of how clean and clear of an image Direct Plus enabled. So much so that people would trade hundreds of hertz of extra refresh rate and good color for its added clarity. But it's 2022 and there is finally competition, and one that is actually affordable. Sure, the Acer 390Hz display out there is impressive with its high refresh rate and close but not better backlight strobing technology, while having improved IPS colors, and it definitely fights BENQ for superiority. But this new VIEWSONIC beats the BENQ at its own game by having excellent backlight strobing, tuned by the same fellas who did the flying UFO test, blurbusters.com, that is arguably better than Direct Plus, all while having IPS colors and being half the price. Now, if you don't understand the significance of a blurbusters.com tuning, they are literally the people who invented the test that everyone uses to determine whether their screens have good motion clarity or not. They are the people who pretty much pioneered the concept as being important. That's how important blurbusters.com is to gaming monitors. Meet the star of the video that we have finally gotten to after 10 minutes of rambling, VIEWSONIC XG2431. When I first reviewed a VIEWSONIC monitor a few months back, I begged for them to ship it in so I could review it. So when I stumbled across the official Lazada page for having a pre-order of the XG2431, I instantly emailed my PR contact and asked for a review unit. To say I was excited was an understatement. Having seen Optimum Tech's glowing review of this monitor and being an absolute sweaty tryhard veteran myself, I was curious to see if this monitor was all that. Even though it is a cheap display, it's physically pretty nice too. Utilitarian and clean, it has a very solid stand with all the adjustments that you would want. And it also has decent controls too. No joystick here, but good enough to not really have any complaints about. Its I/O is simple and effective, and it even has an included USB 3 hub with 2 Type A ports, which is something many much pricier displays can't even claim to have, so big ups to VIEWSONIC here. And so far, for 400 bucks, it's got a very good accessory kit. But who cares? I just want to know, how does it actually perform? Like, I don't care that it's reasonably color accurate with a delta E of less than 2. I don't care that it's a decent 8-bit panel with 100+% sRGB color space, which you might want to know about. Well, it's unfortunate because I don't have the BENQ XL2546K to compare it with, so I'm just going to take a couple of screenshots to show you the difference between this and that from Optimum Tech's excellent review, which you should check out after watching this video because he's got really good tests on it. Performance-wise, this display is absolutely excellent. The motion clarity advantage over my other 280Hz IPS panel, which was the Acer Predator I reviewed like a year plus ago, is noticeable when using overdrive and strobing, which is called Pure XP Plus on the XG2431 menus. And when you have that turned on, it's really good. The stills show how clear each individual image is, and I think it speaks for itself. Having used the XL2546K BENQ in the past, there's not a substantially notable increase in motion clarity on the VIEWSONIC subjectively, per se, despite what Optimum Tech's tests objectively show. Maybe I'm just not good enough to notice, but I do, however, enjoy how I literally do not have to worry about customizing and tinkering the settings on the pixel overdrive and backlight strobing, even though I can really tinker and intricately do so through VIEWSONIC's tool that you can use using Windows Windows, since the max settings for everything actually gives a really good experience just like that, naturally. Which is the way it should be on gaming monitors because it's already tuned by Blurbusters. But what is significantly and substantially improved over the BENQ here, and is greatly noticeable, is the fact that it is half the price of the BENQ Zowie, and that it is an IPS display, which means instead of a terrible color experience, you get actually good contrast, good colors, with a contrast ratio of 1000:1. And with true 8-bit colors that are actually respectably accurate, that's really good. That's a big improvement, especially for people who want a display that isn't just good for tryharding in games like the BENQ Zowie, but also great for enjoying everything everywhere else, which was a major weakness of the XL2546K. Of course, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. While the backlight strobing is extremely impressive on this, and the image is super satisfying and clear, it's not variable refresh rate when the strobing is turned on. And it does also fix your brightness to a set amount of brightness. Now, VRR strobing, or variable refresh rate strobing, has a lot of weaknesses, so I can understand its omission, but there are panels with both fixed and variable strobing depending on the setting that you want. And for people who cannot consistently get 240 or more FPS on their games, because that will be a problem, because that means you will get screen tearing, or you would have to sacrifice your awesome strobing clarity so that you can use FreeSync or G-Sync with this monitor. Although since it's a 1080p display, if you can't get 240 FPS on games like Valorant, I think it's time for a GPU upgrade. One solution is to lower your refresh rate to 120, especially for harder to run games that you can't run consistently at 240, so it's easier to consistently get a higher than refresh rate FPS from your PC while still being able to leave strobing on. By doing so, you can actually increase the effectiveness and clarity of the strobing because the backlight can stay off for longer between frames at 120Hz instead of 240Hz, creating more motion clarity because there is a greater distinction between each frame that's being shown and a greater time for the pixels to fully change color. Though you do lose 120 frames of info, which might matter more than that improvement in motion clarity going from 240 to 120. You just have to test it out for yourself. Also, it's important to note that while I absolutely love the clear image and max strobing settings, it also does heavily limit your max brightness to an extent that might make the screen useless in the day or in a well-lit room. Now, it's still quite okay since the lower intensity strobing settings still give a great image and return you some of the brightness that you lose, but for a true sweaty tryhard gamer, you aren't leaving your mum's basement anyway, complete darkness. So if you're gaming in complete darkness, which I expect you are if you're a sweaty tryhard, that low brightness shouldn't be an issue, and in fact probably is better for your eyes. So then, is this actually the king of gaming monitors for sweaty tryhards? According to Optimum Tech, who I greatly trust and who have tested more gaming monitors than me, it is. It seems like the Acer 390Hz display might have an argument for being the best ultimate esports monitor since it has respectable motion clarity and strobing that's competitive with the BENQ and the VIEWSONIC, while having higher brightness as well as 150 more frames being shown per second through the fact that it's 390Hz. However, in my opinion, the diminishing returns past 240Hz of refresh rate are definitely real, and the advantage that this has in terms of pure blur reduction from backlight strobing is probably equal, if not more, than the gain in performance you get with the Acer. And more importantly than that, this is a few $100s cheaper than the Acer, which is very important to a lot of consumers. The XG2431 is pretty much the best 1080p esports focused max performance monitor right now for the average buyer. It does what the beloved BENQ Zowie does best, but does it with enjoyable and accurate colors that IPS bring, all while costing substantially less than the monitors it competes neck and neck with. It has drawbacks for sure, but for the average gamer, like one with an actual budget, and especially for those gremlins that live in the dark and don't care about screen brightness, this might just be the rank 1 right now, especially for its amazing price. It's become my daily driver and I'm more than happy that it is, because it absolutely is a wonderful gaming monitor to use. On a personal note, it is now officially my most favorite gaming monitor that I've ever used. That's how much I like it. And with that, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. This was a very difficult video to make, so I hope you appreciated it. And all love to you for watching to this point in the video, especially. And if you did watch to this point in this video, please comment VIEWSONIC so I knew you did, and I can give you a little heart and a little bit of props and stuff. And yeah, questions in the comments, questions in the Discord, you know how it goes. I reply to almost everything. Bye.